Day 2 at pre-season testing here at the Bahrain International Circuit is done and dusted, and here is everything we have learned today. Lawrence Barretto, Alex Brundle alongside me, and Carlos Sainz was fastest of the day in the Williams. I'm still getting used to all the team changes, I will be honest. But your thoughts, please, chaps, on Carlos Sainz and that Williams performance?
I think we learned two things from it. One of them is about the day, which is when you run for the whole day, especially with a little bit of rain, changing conditions, you obviously have the best chance of being out on circuit when the moment is right to set the right lap. But I don't think we should take too much away from Carlos Sainz in that, or indeed Williams, in that they've clearly made a big step forward, and that car is more towards the hunt. How much more, we won't know until we go racing, but more towards the hunt than in previous years. And an impressive performance. It was an impressive performance yesterday and more so today.
A big old stint in the car for Carlos Sainz, wasn't it? Full day for him, full day as well for Liam Lawson. What can this tell us about Williams? All the usual caveats of it's only day 2 of testing.
Well, I think they're top of the midfield, to be honest. I think when you talk to that team, and they've been struggling for a couple of years now to get the performance out of that car, they've pushed hard on bringing developments early. So the car that we've got here is probably what we'll see in Australia. They're going to have upgrades early doors, and then they're going to turn the taps off and focus on 26. So it kind of makes sense that this car is as mature as it possibly will be in this early phase of the season. And that's maybe why they're able to get a little bit more performance and make that kind of step up into the top of the midfield. But you don't see Carlos Sainz make many mistakes, and he had that spin obviously today. And that tells me that he's pushing the limits of the car. And if he's kind of at that stage, he knows where he's at, and he knows where his barometer is at, and then he was still very strong out there. So yeah, I think they made a good step.
A lot of weather-related spins and errors through that phase. I would say that Alpine, I think, are also in that zone of being potentially better than midfield where they aim to be. But I think that's probably more because they're dealing with something so close to an evolution of their previous car that actually, in many ways that their understanding of it's greater. Yeah. And actually Williams with more of a revolutionary approach are, although they're in a similar space time-wise, potentially doing a better job at this stage of testing.
Well, I've been burned by Alpine before looking good and then not turning out to be good. But I do agree that that stability that they've had and the understanding of the package they've got relative to obviously last year is putting them in much better shape, I think, this year.
And worth noting that the time for Carlos Sainz, yes, he had the best of the track simply by virtue of being out there for most of the day, was a smidge off pole from last year's Bahrain Grand Prix. That must tell us a lot about how these cars have developed over 4 years of stable regulations.
It does. I checked in with Kimi Antonelli in the middle of the day. He came bouncing up to me out of the Mercedes garage, and he told me that early on in the day the track was really quick. It is, of course, much cooler than when we come racing here in the season. You don't struggle for tyre energy here because it's a very abrasive surface, so what you get is the best of both worlds. Nice warm tyres, nice cool air for the aerodynamics and the engine. So the track is fast. That being said, we're not talking about cars here that are running in Q3 with everything dialed down, the full tyre preparation and everything else. These are cars doing incidental performance laps in the middle of testing. So it is very impressive how quickly the cars are going.
And you've mentioned the weather as well, and we have seen a fair bit of rain. Windscreen wipers were on the drive-in this morning. We've been dodging the rain, Lawrence, haven't we, throughout the entire day, and it's very rare to see that in Bahrain. And standing here right now, it's later into the evening, but it's so cold, and I think forecast looks pretty similar tomorrow as well. As Alex was saying, unseasonable conditions here in Bahrain, but ones that perhaps the cars are enjoying somewhat.
Oh, well, I was told there are better conditions at Silverstone, better conditions at Barcelona today. So, yeah, we would never have thought that it was going to be so cold around here. But like you said, good conditions. Not ideal, obviously, with brakes in running. And I think James Key was saying earlier today, for a driver like Gabriel Bortoleto who needs miles, it's just not ideal to have that many kind of stop-starts during the day. But he caught back up. He did a good job. And I think they're just making the best of it. And I think it helps. Fourth generation of car. The kind of learnings are slightly smaller than they would need to if this was, next year at the start of a new regulation set.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because actually the rain did come down relatively heavily at one point, and we did see most of the cars in the garage. Haas ventured out on intermediates. Yeah. Only Haas have brought inters and wets, and Aston Martin have brought 3 sets of inters. They didn't choose to go out though because it wasn't quite inter weather, but it wasn't dry enough for slicks. It was a bit of a weird one.
No, and also you have to give 5 sets back of the 35 that you choose, so you don't have to use those inters. You can still use the other slick tyres. So I think it was good for maybe Haas to go out and do a little bit of learning, but Aston didn't need to waste it there. And yeah, not ideal conditions out there, but I still think, looking at the lap charts, so many laps on the board, I think there's going to be a lot of happy teams out there.
It was definitely good good for us because there was not a lot going on through that phase of the day. That, of course, washed away an element of the rubber that had gone down, which is why we didn't see quite the ramp up into the afternoon session today, which was interesting to compare morning and afternoon drivers.
Ferrari, then, just a smidge behind Carlos Sainz themselves. It's funny thinking of Carlos Sainz not being in Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc also up there. What can we deduce from that in terms of Ferrari's speed and where they may be emerging from this pre-season testing?
So they were super quick in a straight line yesterday. Lewis Hamilton on his best lap yesterday made a bit of an error down in turn 8 where he dropped time in the middle sector. He scooped that time up today. And interestingly, they were performant, but also when you look at the data that came out in comparison to, for example, Mercedes, they've dropped into line in terms of the straight line performance a little bit more today. So I think that's genuine performance. Leclerc had a slightly less good race run, I would say, at the end of the day, but that's a factor of testing and managing the car. I think it's been a good day for Ferrari, a better day than yesterday for Ferrari.
Lawrence, you're quite excited by the Ferrari, aren't you?
I'm getting on the hype train.
Wow.
Yeah,
Early
from a
doors.
performance perspective.
Two of testing is on the hype train.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the teams I've talked to today, other drivers who saw that run that Lewis put together as he was kind of building performance through the day, and then they were comparing it to what they think they could do in their own package at the same point. I think there were a lot of people who were super impressed with what he was able to do. Race runs, I think, yeah, I agree. I think there's probably some work to do there, but I think the very fact that we're talking about a Ferrari and Lewis has spent a handful of laps in this day only, and that it looks so good already, I think that shows that they've made a massive step over the winter in terms of understanding the package that they've got and that they're right there. And yeah, I think at the minute, I think they're top of the pile.
Hopefully we'll see a bit more to deduce and get some answers from tomorrow. On to Red Bull. You were in the pit lane or nearabouts when they had a bit of a stoppage during the day and screens were up. Now, during testing, when you see the screens, I like to call them the screens of doom. I'm not sure it's entirely doom, but the screens go up, not just human walls, but actual physical screens are wheeled across, and that typically means the floor is off the car. So what kind of work are they going to be really looking at there? Because it's not the simple setup change to suspension or front wing, is it?
Well, the word in the paddock was that it was a water leak, but the team have yet to confirm that fully, and they're under no obligation to confirm that, and we have no way to corroborate it apart from asking the team. So effectively, we don't know. One thing I would point out is that we thought McLaren had a mechanical issue in the middle of yesterday when they were parked in the garage for a long period of time, and but that was clearly when they came out of the garage, just a setup change. The difference between these two is Red Bull had all the floors off and everything else, and I actually stood down in the pit lane and heard them fire the car back up inside the garage, which is always a clue that they're testing engine function, because there are very few other reasons why they do that.
Right, and in terms of Red Bull and their general demeanour, their approach to testing, it's been relatively quiet. We're not hearing a lot from the team. I don't quite know what to take from that.
Well, they were the ones who caused the fuss last year, didn't they? On that first day when Max went out there, and the pace of that car from the get-go looked good. What I'm hearing is that I think the car is just generally more predictable, and I think that's a good thing. Both Liam and Max are saying that. So early doors, the car's already a little bit more drivable. They obviously haven't stretched the legs properly, so I think until Max really gets in the car tomorrow, with all that learnings he's had of the previous iterations of Red Bull, we won't really know. But I think they're trying to play their cards closer to their chest and maybe not get too excited, but actually gradually behind the scenes making progress with a car that I'm not so sure is going to be that developed this year, because I think they're focusing more on 2026, and I think that might play a part into the evolution of the car from last year into this year. But I think it's encouraging, but not like headline times.
Red Bull is a wait for tomorrow job, I think. They ran Liam all day today and got a lot of mileage for him. But we've got a full day of the world champion coming tomorrow, and I don't know, I sense that they are, they're backloading the testing program a little bit towards getting a full day, which Max likes to do at the end of testing. So let's talk at the end of the 3 days, I think, about Red Bull.
Yeah, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more, hopefully, by the end of day 3, and then a lot more at the end of the Australian Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time. On to Mercedes. Alex, you were trackside, and you were saying how much you were enjoying watching Antonelli chucking it into the corners and really letting it rip out there. How impressed are you, both with his demeanour, his attitude, the way that he's come into this paddock as a rookie, but equally what you're seeing on the timing sheets as well?
So he ran in the afternoon, slightly better track condition, one would assume, with the track continuing to evolve, but he ended up 0.06 behind George Russell, which is a good effort considering where he is in his F1 career. More impressive, though, still was the race run that was actually going on while I was out on track. He was throwing it into turn 4, but then really pinpoint perfect on the apex, lap after lap after lap. It was impressive to watch. All of the rookies were impressive to watch. Ollie Behrman, exactly the same, just with a little bit less downforce underneath him in the Haas. Yeah, really strong, really consistent, and not too far off Lando Norris, who was doing a similar race run at the same time. So it's been a great day for Antonelli.
What's the general chatter, Lawrence, around Mercedes in the paddock?
I think they're a little bit of the great unknown, to be honest, because the cooler conditions traditionally was where they were stronger last year, and Toto was talking today in the press conference about how actually the gap wasn't as big as he would have thought it would have been in various iterations, because they were normally quite strong when it was cold conditions relative to the rest of the field. So it's probably another case of let's wait and see until not just tomorrow, but maybe when we get to the warmer climates and seeing how the car performs and looks after its tyres and the tyre management in the warmer conditions. Generally encouraging, but the problem is I'm saying it's encouraging for a lot of teams. Clearly, it can't be good for everyone. So I think they are, like I said, the great unknown, and I'm intrigued to see how the next day goes and then the first couple of races.
Yeah, for sure. A much quieter day, relatively, for McLaren. They aren't drenched in Flovis and posting fastest times, but we were watching Lando Norris's antics in the final few minutes there, looking to be on a push lap, purple middle sector, and then just coming into the pit lane one moment wide on the last corner. What did you make of McLaren today and what Lando Norris was up to?
He looked quickest to me. I have to look through all of the data after the day, but he looked quickest to me out there when there were a sequence of race runs going on. They went for a performance run at the end. The car went out with a lot of understeer, came in, gave it a tweak of front wing pretty clearly, and then sent him back out again. So they didn't get the performance run they wanted at the end of today, McLaren, but that's very testing spec, isn't it? They got a great run in yesterday, ends up relatively close to the pace anyway, but interesting that they kind of miscalculated the balance when they actually sent him to go for gold at the end of the day.
Any other business? Who do you think has a bit of work to do heading into day 3?
Aston Martin, I think they're still chasing their tails a little bit from yesterday when they lost that mileage. Talking to the team, I don't think they're scared. They're not worried about the lack of laps they managed to achieve. But obviously, when you're looking and you're trying to compare who's doing the stronger job and who isn't, they've probably had the toughest time of it. But it's fine margins out there. And I think maybe because they've made so many changes to that car over the winter, it just could be like a few niggles, which is what testing is for, just to iron those out. And maybe there is something really in it when they start to stretch it. So they're a difficult one to read. And then Sauber and Haas, I don't know what to make of them really, because Haas are doing this very different program again for the second successive day, and Sauber, I think probably they still do look like the weakest package that we've got out here, but maybe slightly closer to the pack than they were last year.
I'm looking forward to the final couple of hours tomorrow. We might just see a little bit of something to take us through to Australia. We will see 18 drivers in action tomorrow, with Max Verstappen and Alex Albon with a full 8 hours of running in the car ahead of them. Thank you both very much indeed for all of your insights on day 2 of testing. Do join us for day 3. We'll see you there.